All right, we're ready, Dr. Grizzle.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to Kimberly's Go Team meeting, where we will follow the agenda as it has been emailed to you and publicly noticed. I would like to remind everyone that this is a meeting of the Go Team. Only members of the team may participate in the discussion. Any members of the public present are here to quietly observe. For members of the Go Team, please identify yourself when you speak. I am pleased to call this meeting of the Kimberly Go Team to order at 5:20 p.m. Our first order of business is to call roll. The secretary will now take roll.
All right. Okay, call to order. I will call the roll. Christy Reeves, principal.
Present.
Jillian Dixon, parent.
Present.
Jenny Goodrich, cluster rep.
Present.
Sharita Murian, vice chair. Sharita Murian, vice chair. Okay. Lockett Amy, secretary, present. Dana Dixon Martin, instructional staff. Absent. Sharon Hestall,
Present.
instructional staff. Thank you. Leanne Patterson, community member.
Present.
Thank you. Catherine Carter Smith, community member. Absent. Tamika Grizzle, chair.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay. This team will only be able to take official action if a quorum is present. Miss Amy, is there a quorum present?
Yes, there's a quorum present.
Okay. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. This was provided to you and copies were emailed and posted. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there's not any changes to the agenda.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Leanne Patterson make a motion to approve the agenda.
A second?
I, Jenny Goodrich, second that motion.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. We will review and approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. The minutes have been provided to you. Are there any corrections?
No, there are not any corrections to the previous meeting minutes.
If there are no further corrections, may I have a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes?
I, Sharon Heck, move to approve the previous minutes.
Okay. A second?
I, Jillian Dixon, second that motion.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions, please say abstain. All right. Our first action item is the current school strategic plan.
Are you ready for me, Dr. Grizzle?
So, sorry, yes.
Okay. So this slide here just talks about where we are, our strategic plan is a guide for the work we're doing in the school. By monitoring the plan and ranking priorities, we can all work towards the common goals. Using the priorities in the strategic plan, the school leadership team developed a continuous improvement plan that we costed for the current school year. All right, this is our Go Team timeline. And so this is where we are. We're in, I'm gonna call it stage 4. And we are utilizing current data, and the Go Team is going to review, possibly make updates to our school strategic priorities and plan. All right, the discussion items and actions for this meeting include looking at our current strategic plan, looking at Georgia Milestones math data because that was embargoed the last time we met, looking at our continuous improvement plan, our needs assessment, our SMART goals, and our action plan. We're going to look at the strategic plan alignment and our priority ranking. All right, here's our current strategic plan. In our current strategic plan, you see the SMART goals going across the top. So these SMART goals in this strategic plan, they are a big picture. They are big picture goals from where we started to where we plan to go. So what you see in red underneath that first SMART goal that talks about the 3rd through 5th grade students being proficient or above in reading as measured by the Georgia Milestones Assessment, you'll see that we started at 9.7% of our students proficient. And over this long-term goal, 2026, we wanted to move from there to 34.7%. Now, we're not looking at that like that's where we want to cap. That was just a realistic, attainable goal when you're coming from 9.7%. The district goal, however, for 2026 is that they want 47% of 3rd through 5th grade students to be proficient or above in reading. Next, when we look at that second SMART goal, the percentage of students in 3rd through 5th scoring proficient and above in math as measured by the Georgia Milestones Assessment, we were at 5.6%. And our long-term goal for 2026 was 30.6%. The district goal is 45.4%. Of course, we are always aiming to be higher, or as high as we can be. But we are definitely moving in the right direction, and that is something that you will see as we continue. Our third goal is to increase the daily attendance rate for K through 5 students to an average of 95% or higher. When we look at our strategic priorities and initiatives, they fall into these 4 buckets: fostering academic excellence for all, building a culture of student support, equipping and empowering leaders and staff, and creating a system of school support. Our current strategic priorities, and I say current because tonight is an opportunity for us to review or to edit some of those goals. Some of those strategic priorities. So the ones that we have currently, we have 8, and those include develop knowledgeable scholars through the use of an academic systems framework, IB, build student mathematical and critical thinking skills, create a literate community in which students read and write with clarity and fluency, create a safe, nurturing, and caring environment for all students, utilize flexible learning tools, technology integration, and targeted instruction to personalize learning for all students. Build the capacity of teacher leaders to support instructional programs and implementation. Build capacity of school to support parent-community partnerships and improve student attendance. Some of the school strategies that we are using to do some of these things, they have not changed. However, what you will see on a couple of slides moving forward is that I did change a little bit of the language to just to be a little bit more up to date with the way things are tailored. And I'll explain that a little bit later, but they include ensure a mastery of core content and connection with the IB framework, increase student discourse during math, incorporate problem solving daily in math content, ensure that structured literacy is implemented with fidelity, explicit teaching of daily SEL lessons, wraparound supports for students, Ensure that small group instruction is data-driven and implemented with fidelity. Provide targeted professional learning opportunities focused on the science of reading. Increase related endorsements and certifications. Parent engagement strategy is removing barriers. We continue with our parent academy, cultivating community partnerships to support school improvement efforts, and utilize school-based wraparound services and incentives. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna discuss some of the data from the Georgia Milestones Math because we, again, didn't have an opportunity to really look at this. So when we look at Kimberly, Kimberly had 39% of the students in the beginning learner level. 39% of the students were in the developing learner level. 20% of the students were in the proficient level, and 2% of the students were in the distinguished level in math. That's as measured by Georgia Milestones, the spring of 2024. When you look up at the district comparison, we are not that far off from the district comparison. We are in the area of having more students in the distinguished category. So that's something, that we definitely have been having conversations about is, what do we do with those learners that are coming to us that are proficient and have the opportunity to stretch themselves beyond proficiency? When you look at Kimberly by grade level band, you'll see that in third grade, we have 43% of the students in the beginning level range. Fourth grade looked a little bit better with only 27%. And then the fifth graders, these are the students that are now sixth graders, they were at 45% of those students in the beginning level range. It looked as if our fourth grade students were performing better. And I can tell you right now, as we're looking at the trend data, our fifth grade students are continuing to uphold this performance. And so that is one thing that is really good that they are maintaining that. The third graders, who are now our fourth graders, they're putting a lot of work into those students. But again, we had a couple of hiccups last year in third grade that we have ironed out this year. So, we definitely hope that things will look a lot different. When we look at student growth percentile in the area of mathematics, Kimberly ranks 6th. And if you'll remember, we were 3rd in ELA, and we are 6th in math. And that's something to really celebrate, because when you think, now I don't have all of the elementary schools on here. I just did a little snippet of the schools at the top. But when you think about 6 out of all the elementary schools, that is something to really be proud about. And this has to do with the amount of growth that kids experience. One of the things I want to highlight is the 49% of the students who achieve high growth. So this 34%, they achieved typical growth. This is what you should do as a child that has had a year's worth of mathematics. This is the amount of expected growth. But almost 50% of our students were achieving high growth, meaning like I use the number 60, as a benchmark, but like almost like how we preach, oh, we need you to grow a year and a half. Because when you have a school where you have a population of students that are below grade level, you can't just have typical growth. And so that is like kudos to mathematics for this. When we look at, you saw this the last time we met, but it didn't have math on there. And so now you're going to see the complete picture. Just so you know, this represents just students proficient and distinguished. Remember, there's a pocket of students that are developing, but those pockets of students are not represented here. They do earn us points when we talk about CCRPI. They earn us a half point because they are developing, but they are not proficient. Students who are proficient earn us a whole point, and students who are distinguished earn us a point and a half. So when we're looking at from year to year, and we're going to focus on 23 to 24, we have at least, our goal was always a 3% growth. You're going to see that in ELA, you see it in math, and you see it in science. All right, now I'm gonna turn it back over to Dr. Grizzle for the data protocol discussion.
All right. So looking at the previous data, what do you notice about the trends? We can go back to the last screen. It's not letting you.
Dr. Grizzle, tell me how far back you want me to go.
Let's go back to the milestone, the comparison. I know we only have math tonight, but looking at this, what are you all noticing about, yeah. We can talk about the comparison to the district, comparison to other schools. At the bottom is broken down by the third, fourth, and fifth graders. Ms. Patterson?
Well, I'm noticing that it's pretty even across the, well, not even, but we're pretty much in line with what the other schools within our cluster are doing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Is there another slide that someone would like to see a little closer?
We
Can
can
you
go.
go to the last slide that you showed? Yeah, that growth, proficiency, and distinguished. And this is specifically with, this is across all oh, I see, ELA, math, and science.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems to me that we're really doing a good job of closing the gap. And I think that's really where the focus has to be. Obviously we want to continue to improve and see, that percentage of students in the proficient level increase.
Mm-hmm.
But, you have to celebrate the closing of those gaps and understanding that, we have a population of students that are transient, right? And a lot of those students are leaving us
Yeah.
after we've poured into them. And then sometimes we're receiving students that have not progressed as nicely wherever they came from. So trying to close that gap with that kind of challenge really does speak to our teachers being able to really get in and identify the strengths and weaknesses of our students, and then providing all of that extra one-on-one instruction that they're getting is really, really going to make a huge difference, all of the supports that our students have and are receiving.
Thank you for that insight, Ms. Hexel. And just looking at Kimberly's, like you said, growth is important. Thank you. Ms. Reese, can you go back to that screen with the questions? I'm going to take a shot of that.
Yep.
Okay. So the next question would be, what are your wonderings? Looking at our scores, the trends, comparing it to the district, other schools.
Mhm.
What do you think? Yeah, looking at any particular of these data points.
Mhm. I, again, am going to be really curious to see how our students perform this year because of our focus on the writing, right? And also the reading. I think that that's going to be another critical part of their development and their ability to perform across content areas. I think that you're going to see those math scores continue to grow. And I think those ELA scores are going to continue to grow. And I think what's going to be surprising too is that science, because I know that we are sort of identifying that as a place where we need to do a little bit more focus this year. So I think that we're headed in the right direction, guys. I really do, based on what I'm seeing, boots on the ground, and then also just the strategy that we've put in place this year.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the writing because that is in our SIP plan. So we're making a really concerted effort to make sure that that writing is taught across the curriculum. So that was a good observation. All right, anybody else? Okay, so based on our school's trend data from MAP assessments and end of year test assessments, which student subgroups and grade levels showed the most significant gaps and unexpected trends? So,
When
I,
it comes to subgroups,
yeah,
I have subgroup data for the only subgroups that we have are Black students and students that are economically disadvantaged. So what we don't have is a subgroup for special education, a subgroup for our EL population. We just didn't have that number of students because it takes 15 students to get a subgroup. So we did not have enough for them to generate subgroup information.
okay. We want to look at, I guess, in terms of the grade level, which showed the most significant gaps and unexpected trends, as we can see on the screen, 3, 4, and 5.
The data that we're looking at now, would this be like if it says fifth grade, these would be the students that are now in sixth grade?
Correct, yes. Mhm. And then I guess those fourth graders will be our fifth, and the third will be our fourth.
So in most schools, that would be the case. But when you're in a school where your mobility rate is pretty high, the answer is yeah, some of them are because our population changes from year to year.
Mhm.
So a majority of them are the students that we have in fifth grade, but then we have new faces.
Mhm.
Ms. Reese, can you give us just some background on what that would look like in our school on a monthly basis or a yearly basis in terms of what you're seeing in terms of enrollment and then students that are also withdrawing? Can you give us kind of a picture of what that sounds or looks like?
So let me just use this week, okay? So this week we enrolled 2 students. On Friday, we will lose 5 students, 2 families. So in any week, it can look like that. We can enroll 5, we can withdraw 2. So that's what we look like. From a yearly, so for example, we may have 252 students in our building. We have more than that. I'm just going to throw that number out there. But let's say we have 250 students. And at the end of the year, we would have served close to 400 students because of the passing through. So at any given moment, perhaps 400 different faces were in front of us. But we will end somewhere around 250 students.
And some students leave and come back.
That's correct.
I would say looking at the grade levels, we're looking at the fourth graders who are now fifth graders. They have a better start than our sixth graders now. I mean, with only 27% in the beginning, 39% in what is that? The progressing or the yellow
Developing.
developing 32%. I feel like our fifth graders are really, really on target to increase the proficient and distinguished students, just looking at the trend. So, and being the instructional coach, I'm seeing that our teachers are working really hard. So I'm really eager to see what our fourth and fifth graders do this year. And we do have a really strong third grade team, and they're working just as hard with math when I go in and do my observations. So I think we're looking really good. We're still going to be trending up in the right direction.
Ms. Patterson
For
has.
what it's worth, y'all, I know I've
Ms.
been running my
Patterson.
mouth a lot. I know I've been talking a lot, but for what it's worth, having come from the middle school, Bunch Middle School, where I was there 4 years, I could always tell the students that came from Kimberly.
Mhm.
They were focused. They weren't a behavior issue. They were academically solid. And I could always tell. I could always tell. And so what we need to know is that as we send those students on, even though they're no longer ours technically, we're sending students that are really well prepared at the middle school level. And for those parents that are with us on the Go team, you can rest assured that they're going to do well. And they're going to be prepared when they get to middle school for sure. And
Absolutely.
that's been consistently 4 years straight. I've always thought Kimberly students perform the best.
Mhm. Ms. Patterson.
Yes, Principal Reese, I was curious, how is that factored into the equation when children leave and come back? How does that, can you talk a little bit about how that factors into the school's numbers?
Okay, so as far as are we talking about like data points, like when we get like a CCRPI number, like a whole rating number, or give me a little bit more specifics.
For even for budgetary purposes, for the number of students
So
is if they leave and come back maybe within a school year or
So from a budgetary standpoint, they give us a projection, right? And this projection has a lot to do with the number of students that you have in-house. And they look at trends in neighborhoods. They dig down all the way to birth rates in your community and everything, right? So next year they have given us a projection of, and I'm telling you, that's why that 252 was on my head. They've given us a projection of 252 students. And that is lower than the projection that they gave us this year. This year, they projected us at 275. Now, these numbers never include our pre-K class that we have roughly about 20 kids in. So next year, we'll have about what they say is that we'll have about 272 children in our building when we include pre-K. But from a budgetary standpoint, your money is based on first we'll get an allocation for 252, right? And then if we do what's called leveling. And so now they have extended it to 15 days. It used to be 10 days. For the first 15 days, they start to monitor how many students do you have in your building. So after that 15-day mark, then they start to decide whether or not you keep the funds that were allocated to you, or you lose funds because your projection is low, your enrollment is low based on the projection and the money you were given. If you're over, then you gain resources for the number of students that you have. And some of that could look like another teacher, in special education, it could be another paraprofessional. So things like that. But there are times where we may lose a teacher. And our teacher may have to be reassigned to another school. So that was almost the case for Kimberly this year, except we added another autism unit. We split our autism unit into a K2 and a 3-5. So that special education teacher and paraprofessional we were supposed to lose, we actually was able to absorb to fill that position that we would have had available. But When they leave, if those kids are with us until the first 15 days, they're counted for us. If they leave, then we don't have to do anything different because they were already counted for us. However, after the first 15 days, if we gain 20 new students, it doesn't matter from a budget standpoint.
Thank you.
All right, so I have one more question. It says, based on our school's trend data from MAP assessments and milestones and any other indicators, what other indicators are there specific trends that require more focused attention? So that's looking at the milestone and MAP. Is there
So I
anything?
should have included the map data again,
Oh,
but I
sorry.
didn't because I
Okay,
covered the map data last time. But
okay.
you know what? I didn't think about that. That probably
I'm
would have
sorry.
um, because that was the only math data I could talk about the last time because the GMAS was still embargoed.
Right, right,
Um,
right, right.
so I just put the data up that we had not discussed. Um,
Okay.
but when you look at, I will say this, when you look at MAP and you look at GMAS, you see that same growth. You see how our kids are
Mm-hmm.
truly growing, right? And so one of the things that I saw, I went to a principal's meeting yesterday and they had this quadrant. And in the quadrant, it talked about growth and achievement. And they put the Thurl cluster schools and the Carver cluster schools. And we stood out amongst all the schools in Thurl and Clark Carver. We were like the highest growth, right? And so we got a lot of questions like, what are you doing over there? Tell us, how are you moving kids that are in EIP? How are you, a lot of questions came our way. And, sometimes when you look at this data and you look at it from a proficiency standpoint, it makes you sad when you see so much red. But for those of us who work in-house, for those of us who know that we have a whole group of students, sometimes 20 kids that are below the 10th percentile, the 10th percentile, and then we see those babies grow. You're not going to see those kids in green and dark green, but what you are going to see that you are so much better off than when we first got you. And so, that's one of the things that makes us proud and, that we have to keep, preaching to our teachers because, we don't want them to feel bad because you're not at a school that's predominantly green. You need to feel proud because you're at a school where 50% of your kids are growing better than other kids that are just like them.
Any additional questions that you all have? And thank you for Ms. Reese for saying that because like you said, looking at that red, you may think, negative thoughts, but we are trending in the right direction. Any additional comments? Okay, that was it. Thank you all.
All right, so now we'll step into our continuous improvement plan. All right, so when we build our continuous improvement plan, it is a process where we just start step by step. We start with, okay, what are we good at? What are our challenges? And how are we going to meet the goals that we have? Okay, so starting with our strengths. Third highest growth in ELA. And what I wanted to highlight is 52% of those students demonstrated high growth. And I wanted to show the district average. And the district average for high growth is 34%. We have the sixth highest growth in the district when it comes to mathematics, with 82% of the students demonstrating typical to high, but 49% with high growth, and the district average in high growth is 35%. So when 80% of your students in ELA and 82% of your students in math are showing typical to high growth, That means something is happening in that building that is good. Now, for those other 20% of our kids, we continue to work with that percent of our children. But a lot of times it's a process, because sometimes we uncover things that need further evaluation. And so, we still work on those babies. We know their names. We have charts up in our math PLC and in our ELA PLC. And on those charts, we have stickers. And those stickers represent each individual child. So we're looking at how their movement looks from assessment to assessment. When we think about our challenges, even though we're very proud of our growth, we still have 48%, that's about half of our students in the beginning level in ELA. And we still have over a third, 39% of our students in the beginning level in mathematics. What I left off is our average daily attendance. I put 93.4. It changes from day to day. I think the very last time we saw it, which was today, Dr. Grizzle, I think we were at 93.2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, 93.2.
But the district average is 92.1, which it fluctuates a little bit too, but we are maintaining a percentage over the district average. The percentage of students who were absent more than 10% of their enrolled days in last school year was 38.8%. That's like 40%. And we've put a lot of things in place in attendance, because we truly believe if they are there, they are going to learn. Sorry. When we look at our overarching needs, right? We look at, we want our reading achievement to increase by 5 points. So we say 5 percentage points. So we want to go from, we want to go from 23.7 to 28.7. Okay. So these numbers right here, these numbers are representing our, I'm going to let Dixon Martin, these numbers represent MAP. So this is what we're looking at, because even though our continuous improvement plan, our big picture goal has to do with Georgia milestones, right? What we decided is that we were building our continuous improvement plan goals based off of MAP, because that is something that we can track 3 times a year. So we can see how we don't have to wait to the end of the year and say, did we meet it? No, we're tracking, are we meeting it all the time? Whether it is a unit assessment, where it's a common formative assessment, we're always looking at it with these numbers in our head, like this many percentage of our kids must be proficient. This percentage of our kids must be developing in order for us to be trending in the right direction. When we look at our attendance, our goal is to go from 60% to 65% of students who are coming to school and have not missed fewer than 10% of their enrolled days. So when we look at our literacy problem statement, I didn't change this much, but there are some things that are tweaked just a little bit. So we have these goals, right? And we said, okay, but why does reading achievement look like this? Why is this important? Why is literacy an issue for us? And so it used to say literacy instruction failed to meet various and differentiated needs of our students. And then I changed that to say previous. We have a new program in place, a program called Flyleaf. And in this program, we have broken our students down into small differentiated groups based on their performance, like truly have drilled all the way down with our students. And we are seeing traction in this program because they just did another round of assessments. And so we're seeing that our students are testing out, and it's a color band type situation, and they are moving. And so the teachers even see a difference in the student to student, student to teacher discourse that they're experiencing in the classroom, how their students are able to just accurately articulate answers to questions and have informed discussions. So I know that we all feel good, all of us that have a hands in it, about what this program is doing for our kids. And I mean, and it's a program, but it's no good without that teacher that studies and makes sure that they're putting that right instruction in front of students. So that's the little tweaks that I made there. When we look at our numeracy problem statement, I put also previous math instruction failed to meet the various and differentiated needs of our students. The reason why I went with previous there is because we have switched to our main sole, and I can't say sole, but our main resource is the Georgia DOE frameworks. And so we're using those DOE lessons. Those lessons are rigorous. They are, but they are really good. They're good for kids. It really pushes problem solving and critical thinking. And there was a time where some of those lessons made our teachers nervous. Like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna put this in front of my kids. What are they gonna say? What are they gonna think? And now they are more relaxed because they understand that this is really important to push them to think critically. It's opening up really good, rich discussions in classrooms. And so we do feel like, I said previous, so now and we used a little bit of these DOE lessons last year, but now this is our main resource. So we do feel really good that we're trending in the right direction. We already see traction on our unit assessments. So then when we look at our whole child intervention, previous expectations for student attendance were not being clearly communicated. If your kid is not coming to school, parents know it. They know it by phone call, they know it by email, they know it by letter. We even went beyond communicating with parents to incorporate a punch card. And so those students who are in our does not meet and at risk categories for attendance, they have punch cards and an adult that is assigned to go check in on them daily. Hey, we're so glad you're here. We give you a punch for today. Because we have to move beyond just the pressure that we have to put on parents to get their kids to school and just try to, let kids know, like, when you are not here, I am looking for you. I miss you. And so we are seeing we discussed it today in the whole child meeting, and we are seeing traction with with a few of our students who have those punch cards, who actually made it to come to school 10 days consecutively. You would think that's not a big ask, but for some of there's a population of our students that is a big ask, to ask them to be there every single day. And so we are seeing some good things there. When we looked at the root cause analysis, we talked about the need to increase our teacher capacity in the area of literacy, and what the House bill has done with structured literacy is it has put teachers in a position where you are no longer just doing it because, hey, this new practice is in place and this is what we're going to do. It has really taught teachers the how, the why. It has made it a lot more meaningful to instructors so that they understand how children think. And it's a lot about, when you talk structured literacy, you're talking about making it systematic and direct and explicit. And so we have tailored our day so that our students get small group, not only in ELA, but they're also getting it in math. So when we look over here to numeracy, we talked about in the increase in teacher capacity in math. We talked about math modeling. We talked about discourse. There's small group there again. Our next step is taking that data, because now we have a population of students who are performing proficient consistently. We need to take those students to the next level so that we increase the amount of students that are performing in the distinguished range. When we look at our whole child intervention, again, it talks about that the need to improve consistent communication. We have put so many things in place this year. Tomorrow, we're actually having a You Got Game. You have grades, attendance, and your meeting expectations celebration for some of those students who have really tried to turn their attendance around. When we look at our needs just takes us right back to those goals where we want to increase that proficiency. And remember, these two numbers, this literacy number and this numeracy number, these are based off of MAP. So that's why they look a little bit different from the numbers that we saw earlier with Georgia Milestones. All right. When we look at our SMART goals, these SMART goals, again, are based off of MAP. And we look at how we want to decrease the number of students that are in the beginning level, which is that red category, how we want to increase the number of students that are in the proficient and distinguished category. And we have a goal for writing for right score. We're in the midst this week of our right score window being open. And so when we say something like that, that just means that the testing window is open and students are submitting their sample essays into the platform. And then we'll get results back from that. So noticing that goal of increasing from 7% level 3 or higher, and then truth be told, the raw score of 3 really isn't high enough. We really need to be looking at a raw score of 4, but trying to make that goal attainable when you only have 7% to 12%, that we've realized just drilling down from our GMAT scores in reading, writing was the thing that was holding us back. So because we had 50%, about a little bit over 40-ish% of our students that were performing on grade level for reading, but yet we didn't have that many students proficient. And when we looked further, we saw that what was holding us back was their writing ability didn't match their reading ability. So that's why we, like Dr. Grizzle said earlier, we put so much emphasis into the area of writing. When we look at our numeracy goal for MAP, we're looking at reducing the number of students in red by 3%, which would put us at 38%, and increasing the number of students that are in proficient and above by 5%, which would put us at 17%. And again, there's that whole child goal where we want to move from 60 to 65% of our students being present at school, or on the opposite side, saying that are absent more than 10% of their enrolled days. The unfortunate part about attendance, like we discussed earlier, is if we have a kid, when you're a transient school and kids are in and out, if you have a kid and they are already in the does not meet category for you, and they came 30 days, but they missed 10% of those 30 days or more. So let's say they missed 4 or 5 days of school in those 30 days that they were there, they're already going to count against us. They go to another school, even if they improve their attendance at another school, we have to take that against us, because when they were with us, they weren't present. We deal with a lot of situations that we work on an individual basis. We deal with a population of homelessness. And sometimes people think of homelessness as like that true, I'm in a car or something, but homelessness is when you don't have your own home. So when you are in a situation where you're having to double up with another family member or a friend. So we deal with a lot of things that create barriers. And so I just need you to know that that entire wraparound team that we have, when we talk about CIS and our parent liaison and our school social worker and our counselor, it's all hands on deck to support our students and try to get them to school. So at the bottom, it just talks about the progress monitoring measures that we use. It talks about how we use MAP growth and fluency. From time to time, we use running records, but what we're getting out of MAP and out of our Flyleaf program, it really does help us with identifying where our students are. We use common assessments. We use those common assessments because we don't want to wait just to a MAP assessment or a GMAS in order to see how we are trending or how we're performing. Every week, our instructional leadership team, we look at different data points. Our units run sometimes a bit lengthy, and sometimes we won't have a weekly assessment to look at, but we definitely look at those data points because we're always looking at it with where did they start and where are they? Which class is making more growth than other classes? What do we need to do in this class that happened in this class so that we can make sure that all of our students are successful? Do we need to slow down the pacing a little bit because they weren't able to to fully develop what they needed to develop from this unit. So those are the kind of conversations that we have in our leadership meeting. And then those conversations trickle into their PLC meeting with their instructional coaches. Let's move on to our literacy SMART goals. Okay, so when we look at our SMART goals, again, this is that same information about moving our kids from decreasing the amount of students by 3% that are in red, increasing by 5% that are in proficient and above. So in that writing goal, some of the action steps that we decided would be good for our students is, I'm going to close that. Building schema through verbal and nonverbal experiences. And so with that, all of our measures, we measure on either some type of assessment. So for this one, we look at their MAP growth assessment. And so we look at the MAP growth assessment. We're looking for 70%, 75% of our target students to perform at the growth target, to meet or exceed their target expectation. So when we talk about a target student, we're talking about students who are at the 50th percentile or above. These are students who really have the ability to demonstrate, okay, I have the skill set right now to be proficient. Some of them, if they're at some of them are not quite in green. Some of them are still teetering in yellow. Those kids that are at that 50% mark, generally on MAP, you have to be about at a 60% mark to be green. And so we're looking at those students. We're making sure that we are not losing traction with those students, first of all, because that means that in our program, in our tier 1 instruction, that something isn't right. Students who are already performing should be maintaining and getting better. And at the same time, while we're doing that, we're pulling our students up that are in red. Another one of our action steps is structured literacy. And so the implementation of structured literacy is us putting things in our protocols of using flyleaf, using Heggerty, using morphing magic and morphing for littles. So these are all structured literacy programs that are explicit and systematic, and they build upon each other as the students get this instruction. They're getting this instruction every day. Every day. And when you walk into a classroom, sometimes it's just amazing to hear their responses to stuff that I know they didn't talk about years ago in first grade or kindergarten. But these students are learning this stuff, and because it's broken up and it's incremental, and it just keeps gradually progressing, they're actually doing really well with these strategies. Our next step for our little people in kindergarten, they all start off doing this program together. It's like a whole group, right? When we get to second semester, which is right around the corner, now we're going to start to look at these kids and we're starting to say, okay, who needs to move on into a different group? Who is moving faster? Now that you've had certain foundational things in place, who's moving faster than the other students? And how do we organize different groups now to meet the needs of those students so that they can continue to grow faster? The other students in grades 1 through, unfortunately, I have to say 5, because this program is really designed for students K2. You really should be testing out. But when you work in an environment where you have a lot of students with a lot of needs, we decided, let's test everybody. Let's find anybody with a gap. So when we tested K5, we found any kid. We have some 5th graders. We have some 4th graders who still need these foundational skills and this kind of structured literacy. And so we're making sure that they get what they need as well. We're gauging that on the MAP fluency. Now, MAP fluency is given to our K3 students, not our 4-5 students. It used to be something that everybody could take, but they pulled it back. And so for our 4-5 students, we're looking at those students who are still working in that area. We're looking at their growth from color band to color band or series to series, however you want to put it. Our next action step is to integrate writing across the curriculum. We are measuring this with our Right Score assessment, but there are other ways that they measure this. Our students are using rubrics, they're using checklists. We are training our students to look at a piece of writing and try to really determine their next steps. Something that we put in place is, and that we had in place, but we're really enhancing, is ensuring that there is an opportunity for writing conferences. So that means that when a student is writing a piece, they get 3 to 5 minutes of individual one-on-one time with their teacher, where the teacher says, okay, I want you to focus on this. This one thing. I want you to focus on this one thing, and I want you to think about, and I want you to create, and then I'm going to check in with you later. And so that teacher makes rounds throughout this writing time, where each kid can get that one-on-one support. So by the end of the week, every kid has had that one-on-one time with their teacher in a writing conference. This is our subgroup action steps. So our subgroup action steps, we have them written in for our DSE students. At this time, we potentially, those numbers fluctuate as well. We could potentially have a subgroup for our special education students, but this is in place. The inclusive practices specialist will provide professional learning on specially designed instruction. So that has been ongoing, I want to say now for the last couple of years. And so what we look at for our DSE students is how many of those students are meeting and exceeding their growth target on MAP. We put an aim for 45. That number, and I will tell you, I changed that. That number was really low. So I increased that number to 45% because I went to their performance last year on MAP, and it just made sense that that number matched the potential with the +5 increase, that it matched where they really had the potential to be. And then ensure that instructional practices and interventions are aligned to their IEP goals. And so that's something that their case manager, generally their teacher, takes care of. When we look at numeracy, and I know this is a lot, I know it is, I'm talking a lot. But if you need me to stop and slow down, just let me know. When we look at numeracy, at the top, you'll see our goals again, where we're decreasing the number of students in beginning and increasing the number of students who are proficient and above. And some of the strategies that we're using for them are incorporating problem-solving tasks into the existing curriculum across core subject areas. And not just, so it's across all the subject areas, and that looks a little different based on whatever subject that they're in. But in the area of mathematics, using those Godot lessons, and, it's just our way of saying the Georgia DOE lessons, they are so rigorous. They have opportunities for kids, they call it engage, explore, apply, all of those terms that really mean how they want students to grapple with this information that is being presented in front of them. And so you can walk into a classroom, and part of the lesson, it's not about getting it right. It's about their thinking and just scaffolding those learners and how they're thinking about the problems, and letting them talk to each other and try to enhance, each other and critique each other, because that's really important, to teach them how to respectfully critique each other and push each other. And so, it is pretty, it's a pretty good thing to see when you walk in classrooms. Also integrating writing skills across the curriculum. This is something for mathematics that is really important, because there are opportunities when they test where they actually do have to respond. They actually do have to be able to explain their thinking. And so this is a really good place to make sure that we are incorporating that writing across the curriculum. This last action step really represents science. One of the things that we noticed about our scores is that potential to grow in science, we didn't really put a good emphasis on, and they use this term leaving points on the table, right? And so we had to enhance what our students were doing in science. Not enough to see a video or read a book, or we're talking about actual hands-on science, making it meaningful for our learners. And so if you came last night to Fall Festival, you would have seen some opportunities where we tried to make science come to life. But we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. For our subgroups, the subgroups have the same action steps that they had for literacy, that specially designed instruction, making sure that their IEP goals are met. When it comes to attendance, school-wide attendance expectations, so we have those for everyone. Using the school attendance committee to have, they have rubrics and checklists that they use. We monitor and identify students that are chronically absent. Literally having those students calling their names out, talking about updates, this family's update. Have you heard from such and such? When's the last time this child was absent? It is name by name. I'm sorry, gotta go back. And then when we look at our subgroup, we're talking about families that are in transition. So we're talking about those families that are perhaps dealing with maybe some homelessness, or they're doubling up with another family. And so just trying to make sure that we are getting those students to our school in a timely fashion every day. If that means that we have to provide the family with a breeze card because they're coming from a different location and trying to get their kid to school, those are the kind of things that they put in place to help those families. All right, so as far as the quarterly check-in, right? This was something that used to be like an official thing that happened. And I did see where there is going to be a check-in, but I don't have like this official quarterly check-in document to share. But what I can do is put this question out there. Based on our year-long SIP plan, what are the actions that the school has already completed? What data supports the completion of those action steps, and what success criteria do we have? And so what I did was, I can just tell you at this point in our school year, there is nothing that I can say we truly have completed, right? Everything is still a work in progress. And so when I look at something like monitoring the classrooms, using a checklist to monitor those classrooms, that's something that is ongoing. That is not something that I would say, okay, we've completed this. When we talk about academic monitoring cycles, that is something that we really wanted to push out at the beginning of the year. But when we shifted to a new literacy program and our teachers needed to be trained, and we had to make sure that they were familiar with resources, that took precedent over that. And so now that we're in a place where our teachers are comfortable, our kids are moving smoothly, we now can pick that step up. And then the next one was structured literacy. So that is still ongoing, because with that structured literacy piece, there are courses that our teachers have deadlines to make sure that they are taking. These are state courses. And then we do a rollout. Okay, well, what does that look like in your classroom? What kind of things should be in place? So that too is something that is still ongoing. Are we near the end of that coursework? We are. However, that's something that we just have to keep revisiting to make sure that that stays fresh in our classrooms. And then when we look at that second goal, the same thing, using the math monitoring tool. I did attach here some data from some units, but in ELA, at the time when I was building this, which was, over the last couple of weeks, we'd only finished one unit. That wasn't enough to say that we are successful. In math, I think we were up to, in some places, 1, some places 2, not enough data to say, you know what, check the box. We've completed that. That's still a work in progress. And there you'll see in step 2 that academic monitoring cycle. And I just want to explain that a little bit. All that simply means is that a teacher has a checklist literally in their hand as their students are doing independent work. And that checklist is chunked into different components. So for example, if it's a math lesson and they're doing multiplication using the area model, the first part might be student is able to build the area model correctly so that they can even do the multiplication problem. Student is able to fill in the model with the accurate information. Student gets the right answer might be the third thing. That way, once a teacher is finished with those rotations, that teacher can say, I know exactly where the gap in this child's learning exists. So tomorrow, when I'm having a small group, I know exactly where I need to pick up with this kid. So, so that's what that academic monitoring piece, and it looks the same way in ELA. So that's a piece that's going to help us really tighten up how we put things in front of our students when they get to small group. Right now, we're using data that we pull from MAP and from all these, from MyPath and all these other places. But to be like hands, feet on the ground and be able to look over a kid's shoulder and say, I see that. And even part of that piece is that teacher like tapping into that child and going, okay, I see where you are. I need you to go back and think about this, just scaffolding that child to the next level. All right. So after all of that talking, it says, are all the SIP goals reflected in our school strategic plan? So yes, when we talk about our goals, we talk about math, literacy, and attendance. And yes, all of those are reflected in our school strategic plan. So now this is an activity and a discussion, and it talks about what progress has been made towards the priorities that are identified in our strategic plan. What evidence and data do we have? So what I did is I took all 8 of those priorities from our strategic plan, and I just listed out the things that are already happening and tried to tie it to a data point if I could. So, for example, our first priority had to do with, and I'm gonna have to move my toolbar just a little bit, the development of knowledgeable scholars through the use of an academic systems framework, and that was an IB. Excuse me, an IB priority. So we are in the process of developing cross-curricular connections through our IB units. Do I have a data point for that? I do not. And that's something that's kind of been in the district, you know, a big talk in the district about like, how do you quantify what IB is actually adding value to in your school? And so when I meet with our IB coach weekly, that is something that we've been working on, you know, how do you put into numbers or put in, you know, how do you draw out this is the impact that it's making? Another priority, and I'll just say our second is really no true order, but is to build student mathematical and critical thinking skills. And so the data point I use is that 82% of our students on GMAS last year were experiencing typical to high growth. And so I think when we talk about where we are, I feel like that is a good place to be. And then I listed out, you know, some of the things that are happening in those mathematics classrooms. So our third priority was create a literate community in which students read and write with clarity and fluency. And the data point I use is that 80% of our students are experiencing typical to high growth in GMAS. And that, of course, that number represents 3rd through 5th graders. But what I put over here where I drew the arrow from number 3 is this is that flyleaf program that's showing movement. And so what I want you to see is that indigo in that first pie chart, indigo is the lowest level. And when you look at indigo here, and then you go to the second chart for their second assessment and you see I know the colors are a little off, but it's a little arrow pointing at indigo. We moved from 47.7% of students that was in that lowest tier to 8.7%. And so that's something to really be proud of and to say, you know what, we do see how our kids are moving. Because if our kids don't test out of that particular color, then it's tied to different standards that they are learning. If they don't test out of that, then you know that something's not working. But what this shows is that our students are testing out. When I look at number 4, to create a safe, nurturing, and caring environment for all students, I'm going to have to say we are a little bit behind there. Not that our school isn't safe and nurturing. However, we have experienced in the month of August, if you look at where the arrow is pointing. So what you see is that blue line represents our current school year, and the gray line represents previous school year. And so in the previous school year, our suspension rate peaked in November and in March and in May, right? But coming in August, our suspension rate peaked right there. So there were some behaviors that we had to deal with and try to manage and get under control. You'll see that it's going down. And so our hope is that as long as we can maintain, November through, I'm going to tell you, May is a hot month, but as long as we can maintain a downward shift, we should be able to turn that number around. So you're looking at a suspension rate. And the other thing I need you to know is that suspension rate that you're seeing in that little chart right there under number 4, that suspension rate for 2023-24 represents the entire school year. Okay. And what you're looking at, that snapshot at the top, represents where we are right now. So it's not all the days, because when you look at that big number, they take the number of days times the number of students and the possible days in a school year, and they come up with a mathematical equation. But you're looking at really more than half so far. So it may look a little bit inflated anyway because of that. When we look at number 5, looking at utilize flexible learning tools, technology integration, targeted instruction, and personalized learning. Didn't quantify that. However, some of the things that are in place is that targeted small group instruction that we're getting in ELA and mathematics every day. The use of Study Island in science. So that's something new that we are really it's not a new program, and it's not even new to our school, but it is new to our teachers in the way that they are using it now. They've gone through some training just this month. I almost said last month, but it is still November. And then the use of MyPath, I put that it's not consistent. That is something that some teachers use and others don't. However, it's not a requirement. It is just something that it is suggested in a classroom. And number 6, building the capacity of teacher leaders to support instructional programs and implementation. So we have about 4 teachers that are going through the top 10 tools training. We have 1 teacher that's going through a teacher mentor training. We have 1 leader that's going through an Aspiring Leaders program. We have 2, one leader, 1 specialist going through a math endorsement. And then we have a few of our teachers that are going to attend the IB training in December. When you talk about building capacity of school to support parent community partnerships, one of the things that we're trying to put in place there is we are actively in the process of developing a PTO. I'm very proud of that. And number 8, in the area of an improving student attendance, I would say that we're in good progress. If you look at that blue dot there, that blue dot is all the way to the far right because we are actually over where we were last year. So if it was closer to that 0 line, that would put us like right on target as to where we were last year, but we're actually over. And then when you look at us compared to the other elementary schools within the Carver and the Thero cluster, because we share the same cluster superintendent, so they kind of lump us together, we look pretty good there too. Based upon available data, are there any other adjustments we need to make to the strategic plan? And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Grizzle.
All right. Thank you for all that great information, Ms. Reese. So I know that was a lot, but what stood out to you most in terms of our SIP plans, math, ELA, science, whole child? Is there anything else that we need to add, improve upon, any adjustments that you see that might, make our plan better? Do we need to go back to a particular slide, our action plans, goals?
It just appears to me that we're doing a better job of drilling down this year, and really, getting at the grassroots issues of where students are. And that's really going to be a huge win for us, I think. In terms of instruction, I've kind of got a question that's a little not necessarily related to what we talked about, but I'm just curious, and maybe y'all who are in the classroom and have that background stronger than mine. I'm curious about vocabulary. I'm assuming that there's probably a lot of data out there that says, growing that vocabulary is going to affect, how students are able to progress. And with the learning with the reading and some of the other things that we're doing currently, is that vocabulary going to be impacted in a way that's going to be helpful? I'm just curious.
So the thing that we have in place to support us with vocabulary is morphine for littles and morphine magic. And so that particular component of their day, which is about a 15-minute component of their day every day, the older kids are looking at affixes. So they're talking about how they can take root words and how affixes, which are your prefixes and suffixes, help change meanings of words, and how that you can attack words by knowing the smallest components of what those word parts mean. And so that is like the step into understanding vocabulary that may be unfamiliar. So that is something new. We started it last year, but we started it at the end of the year because that was a new resource for us. And so we really started it in March of last year, which is amazing because our teachers were so on board to say, okay, I know the school year is almost over, but we're willing to do whatever. So when we stepped into that this year, it was kind of a practice that they were used to a little bit from last year. So that is something that happens in our classrooms as part of that structured literacy. And our little people, they start off with compound words. They move into suffixes, like like S, ES, and what does it mean when you have LY and all of that stuff. So they're learning those like incremental steps of like building bigger words and how it changes meanings.
Awesome. Thank
And
you.
I do want to highlight Miss Hexall. She is our PE teacher, and she has attended some of our PLCs. So in terms of vocabulary, she's doing a wonderful job. For example, in kindergarten, they are studying geometry, and she has vocabulary words on her wall and the equipment that she plays with: spheres, circles, squares, rectangle, hula hoops. So she's also making that effort to make sure that the vocabulary is taught not just in the classroom, but across the school in their specials time. Thank you, Ms. Hexall. Ms. Patterson?
No, I was just clapping. for that wonderful news.
Oh, okay. Okay, anybody else?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hey, Miss Dixon Martin.
Hey, I came in late. Sorry, I was still at the school.
It's
But
okay.
I was added to the kindergarten team, and I can say just from looking at like all the resources that we have, vocabulary is very big. I spend like one of my reading days that is like working on vocabulary, like just from within the story. I always hit it at the beginning because a lot of times students have no idea like what you're talking about. So I do videos or I show them pictures. Um, like if we had a story about a walrus, you would think that all kids know what that is. Some of them had never seen one. So I had to like show them a picture of a walrus. Otherwise, they were being tested on it. It wouldn't be fair. So once they saw that it was like a sea creature or a sea animal, they were better able to understand like what the walrus did in the story. So I'm saying that to say that the teachers understand our population, and I think most of us do a good job of, supporting them and like giving them the work with vocabulary. Like I taught inflections today to kindergartners. That's something that, you don't do until you're in upper elementary school normally. But they were able to do it today, with practice, with my help. So I do like the programs that we have. And that was just like a quick example.
Thank you, Miss Dixon Martin. And you said it perfectly when you were talking about students don't know what a walrus is and showing them pictures. That goes back to our SIT plan. We talked about building students' background schema, but in that background knowledge before they even begin to read the book. What is a walrus? So she's showing them pictures, she's showing them videos. So great job, Miss Dixon Martin and the kindergarten team. Anybody else? Okay.
All right. So this is our opportunity really to talk about, do we want to make any changes to our strategic plan? And so I wanted to highlight some of the things that I did change. I changed guided reading to small group instruction. Guided reading is now considered kind of a thing of the past. Now we do guided reading in our upper grades for those kids that have tested out of decodables and out of that structured literacy program. But we also still call it small group because it's more than just guided reading that they're getting. And I changed that on that personalized learning priority. I added the term structured literacy to the literacy priority because it's not just literacy, it is called structured literacy. And so I wanted to make sure that it reflected that term. I added the term incentives, ooh, I'm tired, to the attendance priority because it's that is a part of what we do to incentivize our students for good attendance. All right, Dr. Grizzle.
You're muted, Dr. Grizzle.
All right. I think I should have a script for this, but I'm not sure, so I'm just going to read the screen. The Go team needs to take action on its updated strategic plan. Do we have, what is it? The motion to approve this change? Say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All right.
Okay, so all opposed, please say nay. All right, any abstentions? Please say abstain. All right, we have approved the updates to the strategic plan.
So in preparation for our budget, we have to do our strategic plan priority ranking. So I took all of the rankings that I received through that Google form, and I created some slides to represent what it looks like. I pulled it straight from the rankings summary. And then this also this doesn't mean that it's set in stone. This is up for discussion on what we rank as our highest to our lowest priority. But what I'm going to share with you right now is what came of the Google slide, the Google document. I did not submit one. All right, hold on, sorry. So this is what came of the highest priority. So it overwhelmingly, our team felt that the highest priority was to create a literate community in which students can't see all the words, but this was the one about literacy, could read, write, and communicate. So this was the one that came up as our first priority. And the whole writing of it is going to be on a slide coming on. For priority number 2, this one had to do with building student mathematical and critical thinking skills. Priority number 3, majority selected improved student attendance. Priority 4, a majority selected built capacity of school to support parent and community. Priority 5, majority voted build the capacity of teacher leaders. And priority 6, create a safe, nurturing, and caring environment. One of the things that Dr. Grizzle and I were talking about when we were looking at this data previously is, I think, it's not that parents don't think, or teachers, because it was parents and teachers who did this, don't think that it is a priority. They just don't feel it is a priority because at our school, it's already like a safe and nurturing environment. So it was kind of not one of the things that needed to be moved to the forefront for people. Priority 7 was, because we already used that safe nurture environment, we went with that blue, develop knowledgeable scholars through the use of an academic systems framework. That's the IB goal, priority IB. And priority 8, which came in as the lowest priority, was utilize flexible learning tools and technology. And you will see all of it written here. And again, I think a lot of times that flexible learning tools, technology integration, that targeted instruction also shows itself up there in the literate community and the mathematical and build student mathematical and critical thinking skills. So, it's kind of almost one and the same in a sense. So this is how the priorities were ranked. All right. Let me see if there's some questions. All right, I'm gonna go back just in case there is some discussion that needs to take place based on how we ranked our priorities. So if no one has anything that they want to discuss or talk about or move around, then I'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Dr. Grizzle.
I'm ready this time. Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve this item?
And I'll go back so you can see it.
The strategic priority ranking.
First, the motion to approve the item of the strategic plan priority ranking.
Is there a second?
Julianne Patterson, second. Go ahead, my friend.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions, please say abstain. Okay. All right. We are now moving on to the discussion items on our agenda. Ms. Reese.
Okay, where we're going. At our next meeting, we will begin the discussion of the 2025-2026 budget. We'll use that priority ranking to I was going to use the word justify, but to guide that work, because as a goal team, those priorities say this is where we want our focus to be as we move forward with next year's budget. Let me or the chair know of any additional information you need for our future discussion. Strategic planning will help you fully uncover your available options, set priorities for them, and define the methods to achieve them. Robert McCain. All right, here's the principal's report. So here's an update on our security grant. So we do have money in our budget that is allocated for allocated as a security grant. So what I asked was I reached out to safety and security, and I asked would they come out and conduct a safety and security walk to inform the decision making for this money in the grant. And they said that it is going to be scheduled for December 4th. So on December 4th, they'll walk our building. They'll look at, outdoors. They'll say, okay, do you need an extra light because it could get dark in this area? Do you need an extra camera? Do you need some type of another layer of security? So they'll give us an assessment and that'll help guide that decision making. I just wanted to formally introduce you to Miss Lisa Hill. She is our cluster superintendent for Carver and Thurl. So she is my new boss. And I wanted to show you pictures from our wonderful fall festival that was last night. Dr. Grizzle took the lead of coordinating this fall festival, but all the staff came out and volunteered, and they even created some of their own stations. The kids seemed to have a wonderful time. There was smiles everywhere. People seemed happy. So I think we do have some people here who attended that fall festival. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, I can see Miss Reese is trying to shoot that basketball.
I missed, but it's fine.
I did the kindergarten color science, and it turned out to be like way funner than like we thought. Like the kids loved it.
And I see Miss Jillian Dixon said, great job. It was awesome. Yes, our parent liaison. She's in the car rider lane in the morning, and she said the parents were just talking about how much fun it was, what a great time, their child and them had together. So, and it was our first. So Miss Reese is planning on to bump it up next year. I know she is.
I think the children enjoyed it too, because not only was it fun, it was educational, but in a
Mhm.
a fun way. So it was different, and I really liked it.
All right. I want to thank you so much, number one, for your patience. I know it took us a while to kind of get started. I promise you that I definitely tried the whole YouTube live ahead of time to make sure it was working. And I'm so sorry that we kept getting that feedback there. But I'm gonna do my best to just continue working with it and trying to iron out the kinks of that. But I do definitely appreciate you being patient enough to stay with us until we got started this evening. And I know this was a long and lengthy meeting, and I do value your time. And I just thank you so much for the support that you always give us.
Thank you, Ms. Reese. We have reached the end of our agenda. Is there any additional business at this time? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I first the motion to adjourn the meeting.
A second?
Second that motion. I, Jillian Dixon, second that motion.
All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed, please raise your hand. Any abstentions, please raise your hand. All right, the meeting is adjourned.
All right, good night. And if we don't see or hear from you, everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving break.
Good night. Good night. Bye, everyone.
Hi, when you
Bye.
start recording, could I ask, it's not about the meeting. Okay. Hi, are we still recording?
Oh, Ms. Reese? Is she here? Looks like we're still recording.
Okay.
Is she still on?
Because I had a unofficial question.
Okay.